Barakatah Yahweh Shah. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh Shah.
That power is getting ready to be put back in us. For those who believe and have ears, that power that Yahweh Shah had on the earth, we're going to get that and more. And we're going to get those heavenly bodies, man. See, Yahweh Shai died on the cross and went through all that he went through so he can go back on the right-hand side and be glorified. We're fighting and making our bodies a living sacrifice so that we can eventually be back glorified with him as well as we were before the foundation of the earth.
The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. And if children, then heirs of God, and joint heirs with God. If so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creature waited for the manifestation of the sons of God. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who hath subjected the same, in hope, because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. And not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body.
Eternal life. That's what's promised to the elect. All right, all Israel. But it starts with the elect. And that's how the earth will be governed by immortals. Perfect angelic forces who are going to come down and rule on earth. Extraterrestrial bodies. We'll be able to do things that humans do, but in heavenly bodies. Like eating, drinking. Did not Yahweh Shai say he's going to drink wine with us in the kingdom? Well, how do you drink wine with a spiritual body? Well, we're going to have out of this world capabilities in those new bodies.
All right. Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. All right. And what I want to get into today, is how Russia, is standing in their light according to prophecy. Okay. And I want to go into the scriptures, into prophecy, and go into the role that Russia plays, as it pertains to end time prophecy, which, that's a key figure. Russia is a key figure, going into this third world war. All right, because this clash, between America and Russia, all right, is going to be the war, all right, that ushers in, all right, the second coming of Yahushua, okay, and it's going to end this beast system and this system of all these heathens, not only the beast system, but anything that these heathens have going on, all right, is going to be annihilated, okay, and destroyed at the return of Yahushua. Okay, and Russia plays a major part, in prophecy, leading into that. Okay, now let's go here because what we have to understand. Let's get this first in Isaiah 46. Um, Isaiah 46 and 8. It said, "Remember this." All right, I'll start at 9. So like Isaiah 46 and 9 said, "Remember the former things of old, for I am the Most High, and there is none else. I am the Most High, and there is none like me." Okay, so the Heavenly Father, there's none. Okay, that's like Him. There's no power that's like Him. Okay, and He separates Himself. Okay, from all these false deities and these false gods. Okay, through prophecy, man. Okay, when you read verse 10, it said, "Declaring the end from the beginning and from the ancient time the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Okay, I will do all my pleasure. Okay, so what we're seeing, all right, is the Lord doing his pleasure in the earth. Okay, it was his pleasure to allow America to come into power. Okay, to allow Esau to come into power, to allow America to become a superpower. Okay, to allow, Russia, okay, to be built up in these end times. Okay, it was this is part of the Lord's pleasure, and plenty other things, but just sticking on this topic here, all this is according to the Lord's pleasure, because he knows, all right, that he, all right, has it set up, okay, for this wicked empire to destroy itself, man. To begin to destroy itself, and Yahweh Shah to come in, okay, and just clear the board, just clear out everything, all right, before the throne of David, all right, is established in the earth forever. Okay, now when we deal with Russia and prophecy, okay, it deals with, when you go here, all right, it goes under the name of Magog. Okay, it goes under the name of Gog, which is the same, because Magog is just the land of God. All right, so Magog and Gog is the same thing. Okay, and then you have the Medes. Okay, they will be known as the Medes. All right, and also the North Country in certain contexts, depending on what you're reading. Okay, but there's all referring to Russia. The bear. As we're going to get. Okay, all these are prophetic names, for Russia. So when you go into Revelation 20:7, says, and when 1,000 years are expired, and this is after, what they call the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages. Okay, when Jake was, in rulership in Europe and, in Russia as well. Okay, the Byzantine Empire. All right, and you had Esau. It says Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. This was when Esau was loose, which they come in the spirit of Satan. Okay, so he was loosed in the earth, all right, to go out, all right, and begin to gain power. He was able to take down certain strongholds, beginning with the Byzantine Empire. Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Turks, which were Edomites. Okay, that was practicing Islam. Esau, he goes on the banner of anything. He's a fugitive. So he'll put on any outfit. The Zionist. Not Zionist. What would you call it? Judaism. Pretending to be us. Okay, Christian. He put on when he was loosed out of his prison. He put on every outfit he needed to put on as he was on the rise to power, man. Okay. But, they took down, Granada, the stronghold of the Moors under the banner of Christianity, and then it says verse 8, it says, it shall go out to deceive the nations. Yeah. Remember, this man put on all these different outfits, everything but Esau. He calls himself a Christian, okay, a Muslim, okay, a Jew. You see, he went under all these different aliases, all right, but this was Esau coming in power, all right, and he will come, all right, and deceive the nations, okay, which are in the four quarters of the earth, all right, so his empire will be established on deception, okay, and then you read it through, it says Gog and Magog, speaking of Russia, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is the sand of the sea. Okay, so he will establish, during the Renaissance, he would, his rulership will be birthed in the earth through deception, and it will lead him into a war with Russia, all right, which is Magog. Okay, in which Russia says the number of whom is the sand of the sea. But Russia has, a large military. Okay, and it's growing. It's growing by the month. okay, in preparation to fulfill, okay, the prophecy, because Russia, you know, plays a heavy role in end time prophecy. Even when you go from there, when you go to Revelation 13, you know, it always ends, you know, with this war with Russia. When you go precept upon precept and line upon line. All right. Revelation 13:4 says, and they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. Okay. So what Esau has done, beginning with the elites, okay, the financiers of this whole system, okay, they revived this Greco-Roman Empire. All right. And they have the world, you know, worshiping, okay, all right, the Greco-Roman Empire in the form of America, NATO, and the EU. Okay, with America being the biggest cultural influence in the earth. Okay, which America comes in the image, okay, of the dragon, man. You know, which is now the image of the beast. Okay, it says, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, all right, who is able to make war with him. Okay, so this beast system, all right, has dominated the earth. Okay, and a lot of people look at it like, who can make war against the West, man, with America, you know, NATO, the EU, that conglomerate, you know, which a lot of the EU nations have become weak, you know, but America and NATO, you know, they've been able to dominate the earth. Now, let's jump back, because now, all right, when you go to Revelation 13:1, it says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Okay, so you go into this beast, which represents Esau's, okay, power structure. Okay, going back from the Greeks. Okay, you know, the Romans. All right, Germania Major, Germania Minor. All right, the French, the Spanish, and Britain. All right, in America, you know, that's those 7 heads. And America came out of Britain. You know, and those 10 horns represent those vassals. Okay, which are EU nations today. Okay, those vassal, all right, governments, okay, unto this beast system. You see, but when you get to verse 2, all right, it says Revelation 13:2, it says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, beginning with, all right, the Greeks, all right, under Alexander, okay, and his feet were the feet of a bear. This is Russia. Okay, why is Russia always in the mix? And the feet represent what? The end of a man. Okay, so this war with Russia represents the end, okay, of Esau's rulership. Okay, because at that time, Yahweh Shai will return. Okay, and his mouth is the mouth of a lion. All right, going into London. Okay, the banking system, their finances, this whole beast system. Okay, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. You know, because America, NATO, and EU, all right, they're allowed to exercise the authority of ancient Rome, you know, which is to be able to, uh, you know, dominate militarily, economically, and also interfere, okay, and dictate to other governments, man. Okay, that's the authority that America, NATO, and EU have had, okay, since they come back into power. Now, going here, okay, let's get this in Jeremiah. You know, just showing you the role that Russia plays. Okay, this is Jeremiah 50:9. All right. It says, for lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon, which is America, an assembly of great nations from the north country. And this begins with Russia. All right. And we're going to go into these assembly of nations that have joined themselves to Russia, man. We got some videos to show you, you know, that Russia, okay, is projecting itself globally. Okay. And that's the Lord causing, all right, Russia to what? Raise up. And they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence shall she be taken, all right, which is a battle formation. Set yourself in array. Its position is to strategically position yourself militarily. Okay. It said their arrow shall be as a mighty expert man, none shall return, okay, in vain. All right, those missiles, okay. You see, because the Lord has equipped, Russia, okay, with a high tech, advanced, powerful missile arsenal, man. Okay, and Russia is equipping these other nations, okay, with arsenals and defense systems to go against America, man. Okay, let's go here. All right, and we're just running through precepts, and then we're gonna get these videos to see how these things are playing out real time. All right, Isaiah 13, okay, and 17. Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them. Okay, so the Lord said He will stir up the Medes against them. Okay, and this is speaking of Babylon, the West, America, man. Okay, so the Medes are stirred up. All right, Russia is marching. All right, in tune with what prophecy, man. Okay, Russia has their marching orders according to prophecy. Okay, we shall not regard, all right, silver, all right, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. Yeah, because Russia, you see, there was a time when American sanctions used to destroy, okay, Russia. You see, but now we're in a time where those sanctions don't have that effect like they used to. Okay, they have, they little things here and there, but nothing major. Because Russia has, America has 24,000 sanctions on Russia, man. It really ain't nothing left to sanction. They just putting sanctions on top of sanctions at this point. Okay, and Russia not in a position where they're, begging for economic, all right, alliance with America because they got workarounds. Okay, now, the American dollar, is going to be dominant. Okay, until this thing collapses. Okay, but the Lord got it set up to where these nations are less and less dependent on the dollar because they all transition into a new system. Okay, so those sanctions, all right, they used to topple governments and cripple, economies. Well, they don't have an effect anymore. Okay, on these major players within this war. Okay, verse 18 it says, their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare children. Yeah, these missiles ain't gonna have sympathy for the American population. Okay, they're gonna come and get busy. All right, verse 19, in Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency shall be as when the Most High overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, and that's gonna be what? Through fire. And it's gonna be completely consumed. Okay, so what we're seeing is moves being made to make this a reality, man. All right, for the Lord to, all right, give America that Sodom and Gomorrah style judgment, man. Fire from heaven, which is gonna be through nukes, spearheaded by a nuclear onslaught from Russia, man. Okay, so let's get this, all right, because even when you go into, what's happening in Venezuela, okay, well, that still leads to, all right, that still leads to conflict with Russia. No matter what America does, these small hats, because whatever move the small hats make, all right, they always have to end up dealing with Iran. No matter what moves America make, they always got to deal with Russia. Okay, so the Lord got it to where whatever move they make, all right, there's a checkmate that's going to bring them to prophecy being fulfilled. Okay, the small hats can't get around what they're going to have to do with Iran, and America can't get around what they're going to have to do with Russia. okay, which is going to be the end of all of them, but it's going to start with the small hats getting obliterated and America being obliterated, So let's go here. Let's play this.
Something very crazy.
All right. So America, Trump been, talking about, a land attacks in Venezuela, possibly an invasion, and possibly all out war. Okay. Well, now what you have is Russia, is making moves. So now, all right, the plot has thickened. Okay. Now I don't expect, any I don't expect America and Russia to clash in Venezuela. Okay, but we could see a political move being made, all right, to where Russia begins to be even more favored, okay, going forward, and America begins to be more despised, okay, which is going to play out into the alliances going into this third war. Okay, so let's let this play.
Something very crazy happened today. A Russian military cargo jet landed in Caracas, Venezuela. Now, what is interesting about this Ilyushin cargo jet is it is the same cargo jet that was utilized for Russia as they were transporting mercenaries around Africa. Now, this is not happening out of random. As you know, there are major threats of a U.S. military action on Venezuela because Venezuela has the most gold in all of the Americas. It has the most minerals in all of the Americas. It has the most oil in the world of any country in the world. And as we saw earlier today, a Russian military cargo jet landed, an Ilyushin IL-76TD landed inside of Venezuela in Caracas, the capital, okay? Now, this is happening at the same time, the same day that Venezuela claims that a group of CIA-backed mercenaries were arrested for planning a false flag attack to trigger a major war. This is not the first major false flag attack that they've stopped. The first one was when they stopped the Nobel Prize winner, Maria Corina Machado, who was planning a false flag bombing in the U.S. Embassy. They stopped her from doing that before she won the Nobel Peace Prize. It was about 2 weeks before she won it. So this is happening at the same time. And by the way, also, we learned today that Russia has officially signed on to a historic strategic partnership with Venezuela. Same day that Ilyushin lands in Caracas, we have strategic partnership with Venezuela that's signed by the Russians. So Russia is saying, we are going to defend Venezuela to the best of our ability, even though Venezuela is halfway across the world. We're not going to let the U.S. come in and do what they did to Grenada, to what they did to Panama, to what they want to do to Nicaragua, Cuba, Haiti, Colombia. They're probably building up to do as we speak. Okay.
So yeah, man, you have Russian, military, cargo planes, landing in Venezuela. All right, around the same times, that there are speculations of, ground invasion or a coup on Maduro, or land strikes, from America. Okay, so what we're seeing is Russia moving a chess piece, okay, and posturing up in Venezuela, okay, to call America's bluff. Like I said, I don't, just me speculate. I don't think, we're going to see much, back and forth between America and Russia in Venezuela. Okay. You can see, America maybe, make a move and Venezuela's military uses, all right, Russian, military hardware to defend itself. Okay. We'll see. All right. But it's going to be very interesting, how this plays out. But what we're seeing is every move America make, Russia is right there. Okay. Now, how these things are going to play out, hey, we're going to do what we do and follow these things and see. Okay. But the fact that Russia is even doing this, showing you that they're stirred up, because they wouldn't have did this in the 90s, early 2000s. Okay, they wouldn't have did these things. You see, but now prophecy is at hand. Okay, so now you have Russia pretty much in lockstep globally. You know, with every move that America is making. Okay, now let's go from there. I said I just got a screen of videos, and it's all dealing with Russia. All right, with the bear. Okay, the Medes are stirred up. Okay, so now you have this. Let's see, Uncle Richard. Let's see.
My friends, history is not written in silence. It is shouted through the roar of missiles and the collapse of empires. What we are witnessing today in Venezuela is not a headline, it is a signal that the old order, led by U.S. dominance, is trembling at its core. The world's balance of power is shifting, and once again, the empire finds itself challenged, this time not by words, but by the unmistakable presence of Russian missiles in Latin America. Venezuela's defiance did not erupt overnight. It has been brewing for years, built on layers of political humiliation, economic suffocation, and relentless U.S. pressure. What we are witnessing now is not merely a diplomatic shift or a military maneuver. It is the roar of a nation reclaiming its dignity. For too long, Washington viewed Venezuela as a failed experiment, a pawn on its geopolitical chessboard. But suddenly, that pawn has turned into a queen, moving strategically and unpredictably, backed by none other than Moscow's might. The move has caught Western analysts off guard. Yet for those
in September of 2017, we took him to the doctor, and they drew blood.
Yet for those who have studied the patterns of empire and resistance, this was inevitable. The turning point came when Caracas finally realized that economic survival and national sovereignty could no longer be separated. U.S. sanctions had crippled Venezuela's oil exports, the lifeblood of its economy. Inflation soared, industries collapsed, and the people suffered not just from economic mismanagement, but from calculated external strangulation. The U.S. believed that through economic isolation, it could engineer a regime change. But the policy backfired. It pushed Venezuela straight into the arms of America's most formidable rival, Russia. This defiance is not just political theater, it is deeply symbolic. When President Nicolas Maduro stood beside Russian officials welcoming military cooperation and missile defense systems, it was a declaration that Venezuela will no longer kneel to U.S. intimidation. The sight of Russian hardware arriving in a region long considered America's backyard sent shockwaves through Washington's establishment. The unspoken rule of the Monroe Doctrine that no rival power should operate in the Western Hemisphere had just been broken.
Yeah. So, and Russia don't give a damn about Venezuela. All right. This is all political, and it's all power plays, man. It's all war strategy. So, you have these military cargo planes coming in. All right. You have Russian missile defense systems in Venezuela. You have Russian missiles in Venezuela, man. Okay. So this is all, a chess pieces being moved. Okay, because this is a world war. Okay, so these nations are positioning themselves, are posturing themselves, all right, for when this war jumps off, man, to be the most effective. Okay, because this war, when it really gets hot, okay, hey, you ain't gonna have whatever you ain't got in place, you ain't gonna have free course to put things in place. So these nations are putting things in place now. Okay, so that's what Russia got going on in Venezuela, you know, so they're, you know, challenging America, even in the Western Hemisphere. Okay. So let's go from there. I got two more, you know, just to show you, you know, that Russia's in their role. All right. Um, yep, so let's go here. So you had talks about, you know, which the small hands we know, okay, are backed by America. All right. And there's been talks of starting, you know, another war with Iran, which that's inevitable. You know, it's going to happen. It's just to win. Okay. So as you had, you know, talks, all right, and speculations about, you know, the small hats, all right, starting another war with Iran. Well, you have Russia making these moves, man. You know, these speculations, all right, dealing with Russia and Iran. So let's play this.
Friends, colleagues, and truth seekers, welcome. Let me begin by saying what few in mainstream media dare to admit. We are witnessing not merely another geopolitical maneuver, but a profound unraveling of the capitalist world order itself. The recent reports that Russia is preparing to supply Iran with nuclear warheads have shaken Washington, London, and Tel Aviv. But the deeper tremor lies beneath the surface. It is not just about weapons or deterrence or military balance. It is about empire in decline, capitalism in crisis, and the desperate search for global control as economic systems falter. Russia's reported decision to arm Iran with nuclear warheads represents far more than a military transaction. It is the clearest signal yet that the post-Cold War global order is crumbling. What we are seeing is not an isolated move or an act of desperation. It is a calculated statement, a declaration that the unipolar world dominated by the United States and its Western allies has reached its limits. For 3 decades, Washington acted as though history had ended in 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed. It wrote the rules, controlled the markets, enforced its version of democracy through NATO interventions, and used the dollar as both carrot and whip. But now, history has returned with a vengeance. When Russia extends nuclear capability to Iran, it is not simply transferring technology, it is shifting the balance of deterrence. It is telling the world the monopoly of Western power is over. This move echoes a deeper frustration shift.
Yeah, man, because post World War II, America, you know, became the superpower. All right, because the bankers, you know, were bagging America. All right, and what we have to understand, you know, whenever you have, you know, these nations making these moves, they're backed by bankers. So you have bankers on both sides, okay, betting and gambling, okay, on the outcome of the war between, you know, different nations. Okay. So what we see now is a shift, okay, because the elites, you know, they want to shift, okay, their center, okay, from America, the West, okay, to over in the East. Okay. So they're dismantling, you know, their old system that they established, okay, post World War II. Okay, the Bretton Woods Agreement when the dollar became the Federal Reserve currency. Okay, and then later on in the 70s, you had the petrodollar, you know, be established. Okay, and now, all right, we see that the dollar, you know, has run its course. Okay, and now they want a digital, all right, currency because even the BRICS, all right, economic alliance, okay, is going to be based off a digital currency. Okay, so now what we're seeing is the nations are being gathered, you know, under the umbrella of Russia. Okay, and all power, you know, and economics is leaving, okay, the West. You see, military, you know, is leaving the West and being shifted to the East. Okay, and it's gonna because see the elites, they're used to managing these wars, but they're not gonna be able to manage this war. Okay, and not gonna be able to manage this one. It's gonna get out of hand. Okay, and it's gonna be the Lord that's gonna be putting the evil thought, all right, in the mind of these nations, all right, to go all out. Okay. So yeah, what we're seeing is a shift. Russia giving, they're speculating that Russia's giving Iran, warheads. Okay. And not only Iran, but Russia is dealing with, the proxies of Iran. Okay, arming them. And what's happening, the small hats are being surrounded by Russian military hardware. Okay. You see, Russia is, all right, in this lot, man, being a guard unto these nations. Okay.
Across the global south, nations long bullied by sanctions, invasions, and debt traps are now finding leverage through new alliances. The West sees this as aggression, others see it as balance. And in this struggle for balance, nuclear capability becomes the great equalizer, not for war, but for respect. Let's be clear. This action is also a reaction. The United States surrounded Russia with NATO bases, imposed waves of sanctions, and armed Ukraine to the teeth. It treated Iran as a permanent pariah, tearing up the nuclear deal and punishing it economically for decades. In doing so, the West left both nations with little incentive to negotiate within a system designed to keep them weak. So when Moscow and Tehran link arms, the meaning is unmistakable. If the system excludes us, we will build our own. But here's the...
Yeah, so, the sanctions and, the foreign policy of the West, okay, played a part in forming these alliances as well, okay, between Iran and Russia, which this plays a major part, okay, in the dismantling of the West. Okay, because real quick, let's get this one in Isaiah. And I got one more. All right. And just painting a picture of how, all right, Russia, okay, is playing this part, according to prophecy, man. That's why, they're constantly in the headline. All right, because they have it's their time to be on stage. According to prophecy, man, Isaiah 21:2, a grievous vision is declared unto me. The treacherous dealeth treacherously, all right, and the spoiler. Go up, O Elam, besiege. All right, Elam is going to Iran. Okay, Iran is the people of Elam. Okay, formerly Persia. Besiege, O Media, all the sign thereof have I made to cease. Okay, so that spirit, of just pouting about the West and America and what it's doing, well, their spirit is gone. Now they're posturing up militarily. Now they're in the posture of war. Okay, because America is the one that dealeth treacherously, all right, and has been spoiling, okay, the earth. You see, but now as these nations see that there's no sense of even attempting to negotiate with the West. All right. The only language they understand is war. Okay. And that's what the Lord is stirring up these nations to do. Okay. Now let's go from there. So now they're talking, like I said, now you have the speculation of the warheads, okay, being delivered to Iran from Russia. Okay. When that's not far-fetched. And see, we all finna find out in a minute. Okay. Everybody's finna find out where everybody been holding this whole time when this thing jumps off, man. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends and fellow thinkers, welcome. Today, we're standing at the crossroads of a world that is rapidly transforming before our eyes. What we are witnessing right now is not just another diplomatic spat or regional confrontation, it's a seismic geopolitical earthquake. The phrase, Russia destroys Israel's power completely, is more than a headline. It's a symbol of the deep structural shift reshaping global politics, economics, and power dynamics in ways the Western establishment never imagined possible. The geopolitical landscape has entered a phase of profound transformation, and the recent developments between Russia and Israel have become the latest flashpoint in this global realignment. For decades, Israel was viewed as an unshakable pillar of Western influence in the Middle East, a state whose power, both militarily and diplomatically, seemed untouchable. But in a stunning turn of events, that aura of invincibility has begun to fade. The story here is not just about one nation overpowering another. It is about a strategic shift that has rewritten the rules of global dominance. Russia's decisive maneuvers, both visible and behind the scenes, have effectively dismantled the illusion of unilateral Western control in the region. The world is watching in disbelief as Russia quietly but systematically redefines power in a space that was once a Western fortress. While the headlines scream of conflict and confrontation, the deeper truth lies in strategy and timing. Moscow understood something Washington ignored. Real power is not about confrontation. It is about positioning, patience, and perception. By building long-term partnerships across the Middle East, from Tehran to Damascus and from Ankara to Riyadh, Russia has woven a web of influence so intricate that Israel now finds itself surrounded by forces it cannot fully control or predict.
Yeah, man. So Russia, has been dealing with all those nations in the region, diplomatically, militarily, and economically. Okay. And what's happening now, those small hats that used to have, free range, to just terrorize, those nations in the region, where now there's a resistance. Okay. And what we're going to see, and it's going to be interesting when they start this war again with Iran. All right. How many new players, jump in the game, and it's all due to Russia. All right, doing what? Being a guard unto them. So let's go here real quick. All right. I just wanted to play, those videos to show in real time. All right, what Russia is on. They're all over the place. All right, because one thing about it, when prophecy, okay, when just as we're possessed, to teach the word, well, they're possessed to fulfill their role. Everyone's possessed by the spirit of Yahweh Shema Shai to do what needs to be done. Okay, it said this is Russia. All right, I asked a list, all right, of key military and economic alliances that Russia has formed. All right, over the past 20 years. Okay, and it go into, it says formal alliances and blocks. It says Collective Security Treaty Organization, the CSTO, a Russian-led military alliance of post-Soviet states, Armenia, Belarus, okay, Kazakhstan, all right, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, all right. So the old USSR, so they have certain agreements, those old USSR states. And this one of the major ones here, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or the SCO, a broader Eurasian political, economic, security grouping, China, Russia, Central Asia, India, Pakistan, etc. So there's plenty more nations that's within that. All right. While Russia participates in economic, all right, so where Russia participates in economic security cooperations, okay, and you got BRICS, all right. While not a formal, all right, military alliance, this is an economic and political bloc in which Russia, all right, plays a major role, all right. And it says, in addition to multilateral blocs, Russia has developed bilateral, which means a two-party, strategic partnerships that include large arms sales, military, technical cooperation, and trade economic ties. Some examples, and these are some examples. All right. Belarus, one of Russia's closest military economic allies, are heavily integrated with Russian military infrastructure and trade. China, strategic partnership including energy, military, technical cooperation, especially after 2022. India continues to import large amounts of Russian defense equipment and trade while engaging economically. Iran and North Korea, growing military, technical, and economic ties, especially, all right, lately with Russia. Okay, here are some of Russia's most recent major alliance partnership developments. All right, Russia with North Korea in June 2024. Russia and North Korea signed a comprehensive strategic partnership, which include a mutual defense clause. Each will assist, okay, the other if attacked. So that's a major military alliance with North Korea. All right, in 2025, all right, Russia and Iran signed a comprehensive strategic partnership, and that's the partnership that they've just signed with Venezuela. Don't know the particulars of the one they signed with Venezuela, but it's a comprehensive strategic partnership. All right, covering trade, energy, military, technical cooperation. Though this one does not include explicit mutual, okay, defense clause. All right, but prophetically it does. All right, because Russia is going to be a guard unto them. Okay, Russia and China, we know, they're heavily economically and militarily. All right, and it says, expanding ties in Africa. Russia has been increasingly signing military technical cooperation agreements, okay, with several, all right, African states in the past couple of years. Arms deals, private military, paramilitary influence, man. And this is all prophecy, man. This is all Ezekiel 38, and right, and other precepts that we've been going through. But let's get that in Ezekiel. Okay, let's get this in Ezekiel. All right, 38, and just read into it. All right, Ezekiel 38. Okay. So the Lord, all right, is I started 34. It says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaws. Yeah, because when you put hooks in the jaws of a wild animal, is to control where it goes. So we're seeing the hooks in the jaws of Russia, okay, and it's being brought forth militarily. All right, they're making this move and that move. All right, it's the Lord with the hooks in the jaws of Russia. Okay, and it says, I will bring thee forth and all thy army, horsemen, and all them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shield, all of them handling sword. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Okay, so Persia going to Iran, Ethiopia, and Libya, which are, represent these African nations, what we just read. Russia has expanding ties and alliances, okay, with all of them, man. Okay, defense, treaties and defensive military hardware. It said Gomar and all his bands, the house of Togomar, which is Turkey, of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. Okay, and this is what we're seeing. Russia is all over the earth being the guard, okay, to these nations, but especially over there in the East, man, and Eastern Europe and Asia. Okay, and it says, after many days thou shalt be. What I end it there, but yeah, man, just wanted to get into that, to show how, what we're seeing, Russia do is fulfill its role, its lot, according to prophecy, man. So Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified. Till next time, I say shalom, Kwon Yashala, Bible Baal soon, shalom.